the reality is life is going to get in the way. So if you have your money automated and you have a plan, when things do occur, it's not like a thing that you forget anymore. It's doing it for you. It's automatic. The following is for informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Please consult a professional before making any financial decisions. For your reference, our full disclaimer will be displayed at the end of the episode. So welcome listeners to the Building Wealth from Scratch podcast. I am your host, Jerry, alongside your co-host, Bianca. And today's topic is pretty important. It's the biggest mistakes beginners make with money. So why is this important? Well, learning how to be a good steward with money is crucial to building long-term wealth. And which is why, we want to discuss today why being prudent with your money will help you advance in your wealth building journey. And we're going to highlight the top mistakes that we see beginners make.
And with that, I will start off with mistake number one, which is this one's a big one just because I am a perfectionistic person, I guess you can say. And when it comes to money, sometimes we are waiting for the perfect timing. And so sometimes like waiting too long to start can actually affect you because of compound interest and time value of money. So that's the biggest mistake that we see. And Jerry, I would love for you to go ahead and talk a little bit more about compound interest and the time value of money and why those are so important when it comes to starting right away with investing.
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to investing, time is your ally or your enemy. So the sooner you start, the more time you have, which is great for your money. If you are, starting later in life, it's much harder for your money to grow. And that's because of compound interest. So what is compound interest? Well, it's actually, a lot of us already know it because it happens in our credit cards, in our mortgages, in our auto loans, things like that. But that's the negative side of compound interest. What you want is the positive side where your money is actually working for you. So what that means is, let's say you have $100, you're earning 10% on that $100. In 1 year, that amount is now $110. But the difference is that now the interest that you earned is also compounding on its own. So instead of earning 10% on just $100, now you're going to earn 10% on $110. So that's how compounding interest worked. And if it's in your favor, it can help you tremendously. Time value of money is another concept that most people don't think about. But the reality is, because of inflation and because of, the economy, your dollar is worth less tomorrow than it is today. So if your money is not growing to at least keep up with inflation, you're actually losing purchasing power. What does that mean? That means that, this glass of coffee is going to cost you, 5% more next year for the exact same coffee. So which is why purchasing power is also crucial when investing.
Yeah, I think those are two great points. And I think one of the easiest ways that I remember, it's like your money starts off as a seed, and then it just eventually, those seeds produce more seeds, and eventually it gets to the point where you're just growing a big harvest. So that's the way I like to think also about compound interest, and that's why it's so important to start right away. And I think and sometimes people think that you need crazy amount of money to start investing, but you really don't. As I think the biggest thing is to start being consistent with saving, start getting addicted to saving, like even if it's as little as $5, $10, 20, 100, but building that consistency is always going to outweigh than having a hefty amount set aside every month. So I think that
Yeah,
would
definitely
be the biggest tip. And
Yeah. No, and that's just the first. We still got a few more.
yeah.
So mistake number 2 that we see is people not having a plan. So, having a plan can seem, basic and redundant, but the reality is it's when you have a plan, you're more likely to complete that task because it's on your to-do list. It's something that you have to, check in with. It's more of an accountability aspect to it. And it really helps guide you so that you can start building those habits that Bianca mentioned. Even if it's $5, $10, $100 a month, but if you're consistent with it and you have a plan that you are going to save something, that becomes a habit. And then now it becomes more of a natural occurrence instead of oh man, I know I need to save, but I don't have any money anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I think also with a plan, like you are prioritizing it. It's something that you're really establishing. You're like it's something on the top of your mind. And I know like another thing is like to automate it. Like that's
mhm,
what it comes with a plan is automating those savings. It's kind of it gets to the point where like, just like that, that internet bill is gonna come out at the end, the first of the month, that kinda is the same habit you wanna have with saving money. It's just that those, 20, 50, $100 are gonna come out at the first of the month, and it's just something that is just natural to your day-to-day finances, and I think that's, like, the biggest thing with having a plan is that you have an established amount of how much you're gonna set aside.
yeah, for sure. And the reality is life is going to get in the way. So if you have your money automated and you have a plan, when things do occur, it's not like a thing that you forget anymore. It's doing it for you. It's automatic.
Okay, and that brings us to our next topic, which is mistake number 3, not setting a financial foundation. So this one's pretty important because the way I like to think about this one is like when you're building a house. You're going to start off with building the foundation of the house. You're not going to start off with building the roof. And so this is the same concept that you need to apply with your money is really starting with the basics and then going from there building on to more advanced strategies. So, Jerry, what are some examples of like creating a foundation when it comes to finances?
Yeah, I think definitely the first one is obviously the most important. It's having an emergency fund. Um, the emergency fund again is there for in case of an emergency, and it's there to compensate for a loss of income or things like that temporarily, obviously. Until maybe God forbid somebody gets disabled at work. It usually takes three months for that disability insurance to kick in. So you need to have at least 3 months worth of expenses saved so that your standard of living you can maintain it, and you also don't have to use your credit card to live. So that's a great example of a foundational
Co-
technique to really build upon, because from there then you can start advancing your wealth building to other things. And the other thing with an emergency fund that most people don't think about is that it has to be very liquid. It has to be cash, because you also don't want to have gold as your emergency fund, because in case of an emergency you still have to figure out how to sell that and then get cash so that you can do the things that you need to do. So you want it to be very liquid, meaning that it's cash or cash equivalent that can be turned into cash within a day.
So what if like people have their emergency fund like invested in in the stock market?
Oh man, that's dangerous. Just because, at the end of the day, you want that money to grow. So let's say, right now the market is, a couple points down, and you have an emergency. So now you're forced to sell these assets at a loss just so that you can get that money for your emergency. So you don't want your emergency fund invested. You want it to be as liquid as possible, i.e., a bank account, a money market account, a CD, things like that that you can liquidate within a short time frame.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to start, building the foundation for your finances. And then from there, going into more, advanced strategies. So I think that,
Absolutely.
obviously we talked about it in our last episode where we started off not with the foundation, we started off with
Yeah.
advanced strategies. But when you really start building that foundation, it pays off in the long term and you can start investing with a peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, using us as an example, um, starting a business,
Yeah.
that does not happen overnight, so we needed to have enough savings to really allow us, give us the runway to grow a business from scratch. And it's the same thing with your finances. You know, if you do want to change careers, or you do want to quit your job, or all these things, like, you need to have a solid foundation for yourself so that you're not scrambling at the end.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
So now the fourth mistake, and probably one of the most mental, is letting emotion dictate your financial decisions. Now, this is very, very important, and we see it every day. I mean, at the end of the day, we are human, we are very emotional, and a lot of us buy on emotion. You know, something as simple as, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go buy something, even though we know that we have groceries at home. So being able to control a lot of these emotions helps you really make good financial decisions.
I would say too, like having a strategy to your investment plan is very important, so that when things like when the market is not going in in the direction, obviously it's going downward.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's going downward, you're not panicking when that's happening, when the market is going down, because you have a long-term strategy and you're like, you know what, this was already in the plan for my investment strategy.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just market, because again, a lot of us hold investments that we don't even know are investments. Owning a business is an investment. Owning a property is an investment. Owning, Pokemon and baseball cards are an investment. So all of these things are investments, and they all have their purpose, whether they're for leisure or for, a gain. And I think when you understand what's the purpose of that investment, it helps you, minimize your emotions when things are, not going your way. A good example is owning a house. At the end of the day, if the value of the house goes down, is it going to affect us? Probably not, because at the end of the day, we still want to live there. So it's different mentality, it's different problems that you have to really figure out, and controlling your emotions allows you to figure it out much faster.
What would you say to the people that are like new to investing in the stock market? Like, I think just like seeing that, you know, the market moves m- a lot faster than I would say like the housing market. What would you say to those? Like, what are
Well, I mean, you actually brought up a good point. It's funny because statistically, and if you look it up, real estate has actually outperformed the S&P 500.
oh, really?
So, which is why a lot of investors say that real estate is a good hedge against inflation.
Hmm.
Um, However, with the way the current real estate market is and how expensive, especially here in California, it's very, very hard to make a profit off of a rental here in California.
Right.
So that idea is kind of dwindling away unless you have a lot of money already. Um, but going back to your question about the stock market, well, if you're watching the stock market every day, you're already an emotional mess. So that means that you are probably invested in something that you shouldn't be because you're scared of losing it,
Mm,
or you don't understand that at the same time the market has to correct itself. It's a living, breathing thing. I mean, again, we're talking about emotions. The market is emotional because we are emotional.
mm.
The president could say something today and everybody wants to sell tomorrow. That's very emotional. So you also have to understand what it is that you're invested in, and if the risk to reward potential is there, then, and it's in what you are comfortable with, then you have to let it be. But if it's not, you need to reduce your risk.
Yeah, and I think that's like a great the risk to reward. I think that's something that I had like I finally understood once we got an investment strategy with our financial planner, and we understood like, hey, we want to be a lot more aggressive with our investments. We want that upward of 25%, but we're also willing to lose, more than 20% in the stock market, because you gotta, you know, lose some to gain some. And I think that's like when you don't have a plan. So that was the plan that we were comfortable with. So it made it easier for us to not be completely afraid of what was going on in the market, because the investments that we were invested in was like, it's already accounting for that risk. And so most times people are just like randomly picking out the best investment and like what they think is best. And then they're freaking out once they're like, wait, why is it not going the way that I wanted it to go? So
Yeah.
I think that was like a big aha moment for me, at
No, for
least.
sure. And that actually leads us into the fifth mistake. It's taking too much risk. You have to understand your risk tolerance. You have to understand what your goals are. You have to understand what your timeline is, because all of these factor into what investment is the best opportunity for you. Again, if you're a very low risk person, then something that's not invested in the stock market might be better for you. So it all just depends on what it is you're trying to achieve and your overall risk tolerance. Because at the end of the day, my goal as a financial planner is to help you sleep at night. Because if you're worried about your money, that means you are overly exposed. And, you know, I talked about it last time, but I just like beating up on crypto. But but if all your eggs are in one basket and it's all crypto, like you're not gonna sleep at night, especially if that's all the money you got. If it's something small, okay, you can sleep at night. But most people are,
Right.
again, they're trying to shoot to the moon, and
Right.
it's like that's not how it works. There's a lot of risk involved when when you're trying to get short term gains like that.
These are important questions to ask yourself if you are a beginner investor, because um, maybe you currently, as we were talking about all of these different mistakes, one of them resonated with you. And so if one of them did resonate with you, like, I think it's time to really reflect on what are some things that you can do so that moving forward, you have a little bit more peace of mind. So if you want to go ahead and share what are some of the mistakes that you feel resonated with you from this episode, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. But that pretty much wraps up our second episode of Building Wealth from Scratch. If you enjoyed today's episode, like and share. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next month. We will be talking about creating a budget around your life. You don't want to miss it.
Confianza Wealth Management is a registered investment advisor in the state of California. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Confianza Wealth Management and its representatives are properly registered or exempt from registration. This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute individualized advice or a guarantee that you will achieve a desired result. You should consult with an appropriate tax and/or financial advisor for advice specific to your situation. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the host/interviewee on the date of the program and are subject to change. The information presented is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussion should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy or sell the investments mentioned. A professional advisor should be consulted before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Investments involve varying degrees of risk, and there can be no assurance that any specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for a client's portfolio. All investment strategies can result in profit or loss.